Well, those were some of the arguments presented earlier by lawyers representing our country and our argument in the International Court of Justice. Patrick Kadima is an analyst in international law at Wits University. Patrick, good afternoon to you. A lot of the arguments are very emotional. How could they not be when you consider what's happening in Gaza at the moment? Do you think our lawyers have done enough to convince the court this is a genocide?
Good afternoon to you, Stephen, and good afternoon to your viewers. I think the team was brilliant today, from the beginning to the closure, and I do think particularly that they have put in a case, that has merit, a case that has a lot of evidence, despite at a certain point where we are told that they will not be showing these horrific images and so on and so forth, to stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people and so on and so forth. They have put in a solid case in front of the 15 panel of judges. And I do think also that if we look at the arguments made by Advocate Mbeka Ngukai-Tobi, who had probably one of the most difficult tasks, out of everyone there, you could see even the speeches, when they were showing the evidence, some speeches from, politicians, the evidence from the soldiers who are taking footage and so on and so forth, that, this conflict is probably, it has probably gone out, it has spiraled out, and there is a need that the international community steps in, So I think overall it was brilliant, it was well coordinated, it was well prepared, given the limited time that there would have been and in different parts of the world. I just think it was a superb team.
So it's one thing to sort of explain the impact of human suffering. We see conflicts around the world where this happens. But what the court, as I understand it, has to be convinced of is the intent to commit genocide. And this is a particular thing. So this would go to speeches by politicians, and Ngukai-Tobi referred to one, Ronald Lamola referred to one a few moments ago when he said, calling Palestinians human animals shows a clear intent to wipe them out of Gaza. How difficult is that to prove a genocide or intent to commit genocide?
I think it is, given the way international law works, the court would be called upon to analyze all these evidences that have been brought forward to it. Those speeches, like we have mentioned, the lack of access to humanitarian aid, such things, and statements that have been made by United Nations, different agencies under the United Nations that have said, the situation there is bad, there is lack of water. We have heard about the healthcare situation there, where we also showed one clip or image of I think a doctor from Médecins Sans Frontières who had written something on the notice board, and it just shows that, if South Africa has put forward a case to say, look, it's not, yes, the events of the 7th of October happened, but, the proportion at which the response of Israel has taken place has gone overboard. The speeches indicate that, certain people, Palestinian people want to be wiped out and so on and so forth. So I think, to be fair, the court, I think, would have to rule on that and find that there were acts that were violated under the Genocide Convention.
I suppose the question would be, yes, 1,200 Israelis died. Yes, Israeli hostages are still being held by Hamas. But why would you kill 25,000 Palestinians who have nothing to do with Hamas? I mean, that would be the question Israel sort of has to answer, right? Yeah.
They will have to answer that. And for me, I just think while we wait for tomorrow and hear what Professor Malcolm Shaw will bring forward in response to what has been put forward today, I'm of the belief that South Africa, really, the legal team has closed all the loopholes, including the jurisdiction part that was stated and argued by Prof. John Dugat.
So I wonder how the Israelis are going to respond. And I would imagine part of their argument will bring sort of emotional testimony about what Hamas did to Israelis during those attacks. I don't know if those arguments will sway the court one way or another. I mean, yes, that happened. Does that mean that what's happening in Gaza is not a genocide? And I can see some of this getting a little bit sort of emotional and technical both at the same time.
Yeah, a case like this is definitely going to be emotional at the end of the day. We saw going towards the case how both sides, both people who are for and people who are against were acting, social media and why. But at the end of the day, what is before the court is the merits of the case. It is the facts that are brought before, the evidence. We've heard even from the South African side how evidence is being erased by Israel, And from previous cases, we've seen the court has ordered that, for example, the Gambia versus Myanmar case, where the court had ordered that Myanmar should prevent the fleshing out of evidence and so on and so forth, and should preserve those evidence. So I'm of the belief that we'll have to wait for tomorrow and see what Malcolm Shaw and his team will bring forward.
There's another big issue here, which is how big a test this is for the International Court of Justice and international institutions as a whole. And I'm not just talking about which way the ruling goes. I mean, we might find that we have a split court and then one judge has a casting vote and, no one really comes away feeling they've won, even if one side wins. What I'm talking about is that if, for example, the court rules in our favor and against Israel, and Israel just ignores it, and then it goes to the United Nations Security Council and the US just vetoes any action against Israel, all of these arguments, as powerful, as important, as strong, as moving, and as correct they may be, won't stop the genocide on the ground.
One thing I need to mention is that this is a big test for international law. It's a big test for all institutions, multilateral system of the world, for the court itself, But what I'm going to say is, even if, the court says that, there is no genocide found or so on and so forth, what's going to go to the core of this is that the evidence, Israel's image in the public sphere, in the global sphere, would have been damaged. It is evidence that's going to remain like evidence in a truth commission. It's going to be there. The judgment will be a judgment of the court, but the evidence, will remain for years to come. People are going to see it for years and know that this happened, and the United Nations, and it goes back down to the reforms that need to be done at the United Nations Security Council. What is a court if the United Nations Security Council would end up vetoing a decision or not enforcing it? So it speaks to the reforms that are needed in the multilateral system, but one way or another, this case that has been brought forward by South Africa is going to remain for years to come. It's going to be a flagship case for many years, and the international community would have to always remember this case.
Patrick Kadima, thank you. Expert in international law from Wits University. Do appreciate the time. Well, more coverage, of course, to come of our arguments today. Also tomorrow, don't forget, from 11 o'clock South African time, Israel's response to our arguments in the International Court of Justice.